Roy Rogers was America's cowboy. For millions of people, he represented everything good: honesty, courage, family values. But behind that famous smile, there was a private story almost nobody knew. 28 years after his death, his daughter finally came forward and confirmed it. And once you hear it, the way you think about Roy Rogers will never quite be the same. He wasn't born a star. Roy Rogers came into the world as Leonard Franklin Sly on November 5, 1911, in Cincinnati, Ohio.
No connections.
No showbiz family. Just a guitar, a voice, and the kind of work ethic you build when you have no other choice. During the Great Depression, he moved to California and picked fruit in the San Joaquin Valley. And in the evenings, around the campfire, he'd play music and watch how it changed the mood of exhausted people who had almost nothing. That moment of realization shaped everything that came after. He formed a singing group, scored a hit with Tumbling Tumbleweeds, and caught Hollywood's attention. Republic Pictures signed him in 1937, gave him a new name, Roy Rogers, and the rest, as they say, is history. For 12 consecutive years, he was ranked the #1 money-making Western star in America. He and Dale Evans made 88 movies seen by 80 million people every year. His horse Trigger, his dog Bullet, his Jeep Nellie Bell, they weren't just characters. They were part of a whole world that children across America lived inside, week after week. But here's the thing: the man the public loved and the man who existed in private were two very different people. You cannot tell Roy Rogers' story without telling Dale Evans' story. She was born Frances Octavia Smith in Uvalde, Texas, in 1912. Her early life was complicated in ways her polished Queen of the West image never advertised. She'd married young, had a son she kept hidden from the public for years, and carried that secret with guilt long after. When she and Rogers first worked together in 1944, the chemistry was immediate, not just romantic, but creative. He was warm and steady. She was sharp, funny, and every bit his musical equal. Together they were something neither could be alone. They married on New Year's Eve, 1947. The marriage lasted over 50 years, until Roy's death in 1996. In Hollywood, where marriages often don't outlast a film's theatrical run, 50 years means something. But what held them together wasn't just love. It was something harder than that. Something they were tested on, again and again, in ways their audiences never saw. In 1950, Dale gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Robin Elizabeth Rogers. She was the only biological child born of their marriage. And from the moment she arrived, she came with complications that would break most people. Robin was born with Down syndrome. In 1950, the medical world had almost nothing useful to say about this. Doctors routinely told parents to institutionalize children born with the condition, to keep them hidden, out of sight, out of public life. Roy and Dale said no. Not only did they refuse to institutionalize Robin, they insisted she be included in every family publicity photo. At the peak of their fame. Against the studio's advice. Against the medical establishment. Against the prevailing attitude of an era that told parents to be ashamed. Read that again and let it land. That was quiet, profound courage, and most people have never heard about it. Robin lived for just under 2 years. She died in August 1952, just before her second birthday, from complications related to mumps. The grief was immeasurable. But what Dale Evans did with that grief changed everything. She sat down and wrote a book, from Robin's perspective, as if the little girl were narrating her short life from heaven. She called it Angel Unaware. It became a bestseller. For countless parents raising children with disabilities in an era that told them to be ashamed, it was a lifeline. And it helped shift public perception in ways that echoed for decades. But what almost nobody knows is what happened next. What Roy and Dale chose to do with the whole Robin left behind. Marion Rogers, known as Mimi, was born in Scotland during World War II. Her early years were defined by instability and loss. She spent a significant portion of her childhood in an orphanage. No permanent home. No family.
No certainty.
Then, in 1954, at 13 years old, everything changed. Roy Rogers and Dale Evans adopted her. Mimi has spoken about what it was like to go from a Scottish orphanage to the household of the most famous cowboy in America. The culture shock alone was staggering. But what she remembers most isn't the fame or the cameras. It's something far simpler. Inside the house, she said, they weren't celebrities. They weren't the king of the cowboys and the queen of the West. They were just mom and dad. And to a girl who had spent years without any of that, the warmth was everything. But here's what makes this story remarkable. Mimi has said directly that she believes the reason Roy and Dale came to adopt her was Robin. That the loss of their biological daughter created a space, in their family, and in their hearts, that they chose to fill by opening their home to children who had nowhere else to go. She has said she probably owes her entire life in America to a little girl she never met. A girl who lived less than 2 years and never knew the ripple her existence would send across an ocean into a Scottish orphanage. That is an extraordinary thing to sit with. Roy and Dale didn't stop with Mimi. They went on to adopt Dodie, a Native American infant. Then Sandy. Then Debbie. Roy had children from his previous marriage. Together they built a large blended, multiracial family in an era when that was genuinely unusual. Built not by design or social statement, but by two people who, even after profound loss, kept making room. But the Rogers household, for all the love inside it, was not done being tested. Not even close. Debbie, 12 years old, was killed in a church bus accident in 1964. Sandy, 18, died the following year after a night of heavy drinking while serving in the army in Germany. 2 children. 2 years in a row. Roy and Dale had now buried 3 of their children. And through all of it, they kept going. They didn't collapse publicly. They didn't retreat. Dale kept writing, about Robin, about Debbie, about Sandy, turning private grief into something that gave language and comfort to other parents carrying similar losses in silence. The goodness Roy and Dale projected to millions of fans wasn't performance. It was hard-won. It was earned through suffering most people never knew existed. Roy Rogers died on July 6, 1996. He was 86 years old. Dale followed in 2001. The tributes were enormous. But with them gone, the private dimensions of their family story began to fade from public awareness. The children continued their lives largely out of the spotlight. And the truth about how that family was actually built, the connection between Robin's death and the adoptions that followed, stayed quiet for nearly 3 decades. Until Mimi decided to speak. Not for publicity. Not for any strategic reason. Just because the story was true, and because the people involved deserved to be remembered fully, not as icons, but as human beings. When Mimi confirmed it, that Robin's death was the catalyst, that she owes her American life to a little girl she never met, it reframed something millions of people thought they already understood. The fuller picture isn't the man in the white hat riding into the sunset. It's a man and a woman who responded to the worst kind of loss by expanding their capacity to love rather than closing down. They lost Robin. They could have turned inward. Instead, they flew across an ocean and brought home a 13-year-old girl from a Scottish orphanage and gave her a life. Mimi said it best herself. Inside the house, they were just mom and dad. That's the real story. And it's a far better one than the legend.